Amanda Wilson, 32 years old, sitting alone on my birthday with a small cupcake and single candle, reflecting on 5 years of marriage while checking my phone for messages from my husband James. I had been so excited about turning 32, planning a special weekend together, until James announced his unavoidable work retreat the week before. We used to be so happy, celebrating every milestone together, but lately, something felt off about his behavior. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you want to hear how I turned this betrayal into the best decision of my life. James and I met during our junior year of college. I was studying marketing, and he was pursuing business finance. We quite literally bumped into each other at the campus coffee shop, resulting in my latte spilling all over his economics textbook. Instead of getting angry, he laughed and asked me to dinner as payment for the damage. 2 years of dating followed, filled with deep conversations, adventure weekends, and what I thought was genuine love and respect. After graduation, we both landed entry-level positions at promising companies in the city. Our wedding was small but meaningful, with close family and friends celebrating our commitment. In those early years, we truly supported each other's ambitions. I cheered when James received his first promotion, and he brought champagne home when I landed my first major marketing client. Birthdays were especially important to us. James always made mine feel special, planning thoughtful celebrations that showed how well he knew me. For my 28th birthday, he arranged a surprise weekend trip to the mountains, remembering how I'd mentioned wanting to see the fall foliage. For his birthdays, I put equal thought and care into making him feel valued and loved. The subtle shifts in our relationship happened so gradually that I barely noticed them at first. Around year 3 of our marriage, as my career in marketing began taking off, James started working later hours. He became increasingly protective of his phone, taking it with him even for short trips to the bathroom. When I'd mention these changes, he'd dismiss my concerns as paranoia or blame work stress. My promotion to senior marketing manager seemed to coincide with a noticeable increase in James's resentment. Comments like, "I guess I'll be seeing even less of you now," became common. Yet when I offered to scale back, he insisted I pursue my career. The mixed messages left me constantly second-guessing myself. In the weeks leading up to my 32nd birthday, I dropped numerous hints about wanting to spend quality time together. I left a brochure for a local winery tour on the counter and mentioned a new restaurant I wanted to try. James seemed distracted during these conversations, often merely nodding while scrolling through his phone. Secretly, I had been planning a surprise weekend for us both. I requested Friday off work, booked a reservation at James's favorite steakhouse, and even bought tickets to a basketball game for Saturday, something he'd enjoy. I had been saving for months, tucking away $300 for the weekend and another $200 for a watch I knew he wanted, keeping the cash in my special birthday wallet section. The announcement came Wednesday night before my birthday weekend. James walked into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner and casually mentioned, "By the way, there's a mandatory retreat this weekend for the management team. I'll be leaving Friday morning and back Sunday night." The wooden spoon I was using to stir pasta sauce hovered midair as disappointment washed over me. "This weekend? But it's my birthday on Saturday." "I know, and I'm really sorry," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. It was last minute, and Patterson made it clear attendance is mandatory. "I'll make it up to you when I get back, I promise." Despite my disappointment, I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We were a team, partners who sometimes had to make sacrifices for each other's careers. "I understand," I said, forcing a smile. "We can celebrate when you get back." The next morning, while James was in the shower, I reached for my wallet to buy myself a consolation birthday coffee. Opening the special section where I kept my savings, I found it empty. All $500 were gone. My heart raced as I confronted James about it when he emerged from the bathroom. "Oh, that," he said, toweling his hair dry. "I borrowed it for a team gift for Patterson. It's a tradition for these retreats." I was going to tell you and put it back on payday next week. Another reasonable explanation, another moment of me swallowing my disappointment and trusting my husband. Next time, please tell me before taking it, I said, trying not to sound accusatory. Of course, he agreed quickly. I was in a rush. I'm sorry. Friday arrived, and I woke to an empty bed. James had left before dawn, texting that he wanted to beat traffic to the retreat location upstate. I replied wishing him a good trip and reminding him that cell reception might be spotty at our favorite breakfast place if he wanted to call before my actual birthday the next day. I spent Friday going through the motions at work, colleagues unaware that my weekend plans had collapsed. Several friends texted, offering to take me out for birthday celebrations when they heard James would be away. But I declined, not wanting pity gatherings. Part of me still hoped James would find a way to make the day special despite his absence. Saturday, my actual birthday, I woke up to no messages on my phone. No text, no missed call, not even an email. I told myself cell reception must be poor at the retreat center. By noon, still nothing. I tried calling James, but it went straight to voicemail. At 3 in the afternoon, I tried again with the same result. Finally, around 6 in the evening, while I sat alone with a small cupcake I'd bought myself, James called. The connection seemed fine, contradicting the poor reception excuse. Happy birthday, he said, his voice oddly flat. Thanks, I replied, straining to hear what sounded like music and laughter in the background. How's the retreat going? Intense. Look, I can't talk long. We're about to start another session. I'll call tomorrow night when I'm on my way home. Before I could respond, the call ended. I sat staring at my phone, the single candle on my cupcake dripping wax onto the frosting. Something didn't feel right, but I pushed away the suspicion. James wouldn't lie to me about something so important, would he? That night, I scrolled through photos from previous birthdays, each one showcasing a smiling, seemingly devoted husband. The contrast between those images and my current solitude felt like a physical ache in my chest. Still, I told myself this was a one-off situation, an unfortunate timing conflict. We would celebrate properly when he returned. James returned late Sunday night, walking through the door around 11:30. He looked oddly refreshed for someone who claimed to have spent 3 days in intensive business meetings. There was a slight tan on his face, and he seemed almost too cheerful. How was your birthday? He asked, setting down his overnight bag. I feel terrible about missing it. Quiet, I answered honestly. Did you bring me back a present to make up for it? I was only half joking. His smile faltered slightly. I didn't have a chance to shop, but I'll definitely make it up to you this week. The retreat was nonstop meetings and team-building exercises. I nodded, noticing how he averted his eyes when mentioning the retreat. As he unpacked, I also noticed tan lines on his arms that hadn't been there before. Strange for an indoor conference, especially in early spring. Did you have outdoor activities? I asked casually. Huh? Oh, yeah, some team-building stuff on Saturday afternoon, he replied quickly. Surprising amount of sun that day. While James showered, I found myself doing something I'd never done before, checking his luggage pockets. My fingers touched something glossy in the front compartment. I pulled out a brochure for Mountain Serenity Spa Resort, complete with images of couples enjoying massages and hot springs. Hastily, I shoved it back when I heard the shower turn off. Monday morning, I was preparing breakfast when James's phone buzzed on the counter. A text notification appeared from my sister Rebecca. Last weekend was amazing. Still thinking about it. My hand froze midair. Rebecca knew it was my birthday weekend. Why would she be texting James about it being amazing? When I mentioned calling Rebecca later to catch up, James nearly choked on his coffee. Why would you do that? He asked too quickly. She's my sister. Do I need a reason? I replied, watching his reaction carefully. No, of course not, he backpedaled. Just, she's probably busy with work. That strange feeling in my stomach intensified. Something wasn't adding up, and my intuition was screaming that James was hiding something significant. At work that Monday, I casually mentioned to my coworker Diane that James had been at a company retreat over the weekend. "That's weird," she said, frowning. "My husband works in the same building as James, and he didn't mention any retreat. In fact, he saw James's boss Patterson at the golf course on Saturday." My heart began to race. "Are you sure it was this past weekend?" "Positive. They played 9 holes together." That evening, I made a decision. While James was watching TV, I called his company under the pretense of being a delivery service, confirming an address for a package. When I asked about the management retreat from the weekend, the receptionist sounded confused. "There wasn't any retreat scheduled, ma'am." "Are you sure you have the right company?" The next day, our credit card statement arrived. I usually let James handle the finances, but something prompted me to open it myself. There it was, a charge for Mountain Serenity Spa Resort, $350 for a couple's deluxe package. The date? My birthday. My hands trembled as I folded the statement and placed it back in the envelope. Later that day, while doing laundry, I checked James's jacket pockets and found a crumpled receipt for a couple's massage, dated on my birthday. The names on the receipt: James and Rebecca Wilson. My own sister. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. Still, I needed absolute confirmation. That night, I checked Instagram, where Rebecca had recently posted photos without captions. Using a friend's account, since Rebecca had oddly blocked me the previous week, I could see a location tag from one of the photos, Mountain Serenity Spa Resort. Hands shaking, I called my sister. When she answered, I simply said, "I know where you were this weekend, Rebecca." The long silence on the other end was all the confirmation I needed. "Amanda, I can explain," she finally stammered. "Were you with James at the spa resort on my birthday?" Another pause. "It's complicated." "Yes or no, Rebecca?" "I have to go," she whispered, and hung up. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone still in hand, as tears streamed down my face. The sister I had grown up with, shared secrets with, trusted completely, had betrayed me in the most painful way possible. And my husband had orchestrated the whole thing, even using my birthday money to fund their romantic weekend. The next day, I took action to find irrefutable proof. James and I shared location history on our phones, a feature we'd set up years ago for safety. I checked his location timeline for the weekend, seeing clearly that he had spent all 3 days at Mountain Serenity Spa Resort, 2 hours in the opposite direction from where his supposed work retreat would have been. I dug deeper, finding a restaurant reservation confirmation in his email for Mr. and Mrs. Wilson at the resort's premium dining room on my birthday. Bank records showed he had withdrawn an additional $300 beyond what he'd taken from my wallet. The final piece of evidence arrived unexpectedly. A call came to our home phone from Mountain Serenity Spa. "Hello, Mr. Wilson? This is Emma from Guest Services. You left some items in your suite over the weekend, and we wanted to confirm your address before sending them." "What items?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "A gold watch and a woman's scarf. The housekeeper found them under the bed in Suite 217. "Thank you. Can you email photos of these items to confirm they're ours before sending?" She agreed, and within minutes, photos arrived in my email. James's watch and a scarf I had given Rebecca for Christmas. The email was addressed to Rebecca, but she had apparently given them my email by mistake during check-in. As I scrolled through my camera roll that night, I found older photos that suddenly made sense. James and Rebecca standing too close at family gatherings, meaningful glances I had dismissed. The betrayal hadn't just happened once, it had been going on for months, perhaps longer, right under my nose. My entire world had shattered. Everything I believed about my marriage, my sister, and my own judgment lay in ruins around me. But beneath the heartbreak, something else was beginning to emerge, a cold, clear determination to confront this betrayal head-on. I spent the next day preparing for the confrontation. This wasn't going to be a hysterical outburst or a tearful plea. I would approach this methodically, with all my evidence organized. I needed James to understand that I knew everything, that there was no possible way to explain away what he and Rebecca had done. My best friend Sarah came over while James was at work. We'd been friends since childhood, and she was the only person I trusted completely right now. "Are you sure you want to confront him alone?" she asked, concern evident in her voice as I showed her all the evidence I'd gathered. "I need to do this myself," I insisted, arranging printed copies of receipts, location histories, and the damning photos from the spa. "What are you hoping will happen?" Sarah asked gently. The question gave me pause. What did I want? An apology? For him to beg forgiveness? None of that would undo the betrayal or ease the pain. "I just need him to admit what he did," I finally said. No more lies. After Sarah left, I stood before the bathroom mirror, practicing what I would say. The woman staring back at me looked different somehow, eyes harder, jaw set more firmly despite the dark circles of exhaustion beneath her eyes. "You slept with my sister on my birthday," I said to my reflection, voice cracking. I tried again, forcing strength into my tone. "You stole my birthday money to take my sister to a spa." I took the day off work, unable to focus on anything but the confrontation ahead. To protect myself legally, I set up a small camera in the living room bookshelf, angled to capture our conversation. I wasn't sure what James might do or say when cornered, but I wanted a record. The hours dragged by as I waited for him to return from work. Each minute felt like an eternity, my rehearsed words playing on loop in my mind. By 6 o'clock, I had arranged the evidence on the dining table and sat waiting, hands folded, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. At 6:45, I heard his key in the lock. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Hey," James called casually as he entered, setting down his briefcase. "What's for dinner?" "I'm starving." Then he saw me sitting at the table, the spread of papers before me, and his expression changed. Wariness crept into his eyes. "What's all this?" he asked, staying near the door as if contemplating a quick escape. "Sit down, James," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "We need to talk." Reluctantly, he approached and sat across from me. I pushed the credit card statement toward him, my finger pointing to the spa charge. "Mountain Serenity Spa Resort," I said quietly. "On my birthday." His face went through a series of expressions: surprise, calculation, and finally, an attempt at confusion. "What are you talking about?" I slid the printed location history across the table. "You weren't at a work retreat. You were at a spa resort with my sister. The same resort that called about items you left in your suite." "You're tracking me now," he deflected, anger flaring in his eyes. "Invading my privacy?" "Don't," I warned, my voice low. "Don't try to make this about me." Next came the restaurant reservation, the couple's massage receipt, the photo of Rebecca's scarf. "You took $500 from my wallet," I continued, each word precise and measured. "Money I was saving for my own birthday. You used it to fund a romantic weekend with my sister while I sat at home alone." James's denials gradually faded as I presented piece after piece of evidence. His expression hardened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "Fine," he finally snapped. "Yes, I was with Rebecca. Is that what you want to hear?" Despite knowing the truth already, hearing him confirm it sent a wave of pain through me so intense I nearly doubled over. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Does it matter?" "How long, James?" He leaned back in his chair, a strange look crossing his face. Not shame or regret, but something like relief, as if glad to finally drop the pretense. 6 months, he said. "Maybe longer. Rebecca understands me in ways you never have." Each word felt like a physical blow. My own sister. 6 months or more. All while I believed we were working on our marriage, that the distance between us was just a phase. "Why?" I whispered, tears finally spilling over. "Why her? Why on my birthday?" What happened next will forever be burned into my memory. James looked at me crying and laughed. Actually laughed, as if my pain was amusing to him. The birthday thing was coincidence, he said dismissively. The retreat came up last minute, and it seemed like a good opportunity. As for why, Rebecca? He shrugged. You've been so focused on your career, so unavailable. Rebecca makes me feel appreciated. I took off work early for your birthday, I reminded him, voice shaking. I planned special dinners when you worked late. I supported your career moves even when they meant relocating. It's not the same, he insisted. You've changed. Everything's about your success now. So this was punishment? Taking my sister to a spa with money stolen from me. His expression turned cruel, eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. You never deserved a gift anyway. At least she knows how to keep a man happy. Those words silenced me completely. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity that the man I had married, the man I thought I knew, either never existed or had disappeared long ago. In his place sat a stranger, someone capable of calculated cruelty and zero remorse. I didn't say another word. I simply stared at him, memorizing this moment of absolute clarity. My silence seemed to unnerve him. He stood abruptly. I'm going out. You should use this time to think about your role and what happened. Relationships fail for a reason, Amanda. With that parting shot, he grabbed his keys and left. I heard his car start and drive away, presumably to be with Rebecca. The moment the door closed behind him, the composure I had maintained crumbled entirely. Sobs tore from my throat as I collapsed onto the dining room floor. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest making it hard to breathe. I gasped for air between sobs, my entire body shaking. I'm not sure how long I stayed there, but eventually I called Sarah. My words were barely coherent, but she understood enough. I'm coming over, she said firmly. Don't move. 20 minutes later, Sarah found me still on the floor. She helped me to the bathroom, where I promptly threw up, my body physically rejecting the trauma. She held my hair back, murmuring soothing words as I retched and sobbed simultaneously. He laughed at me, I kept repeating. He laughed while I cried. Sarah's face hardened with anger on my behalf, but she stayed calm, focused on helping me through the immediate crisis. She brought me water, helped me to the couch, and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders as shock set in, leaving me trembling. You're not staying here tonight, she decided, looking around the house that suddenly felt contaminated by betrayal. Pack some essentials. You're coming to my place. On autopilot, I gathered clothes, toiletries, and important documents. Sarah grabbed my laptop, phone charger, and the memory card from the camera that had recorded everything. As we were about to leave, I hesitated at the door. Should I call my parents? Tell them about Rebecca? Sarah gently steered me toward her car. Not tonight. Tonight is about getting you somewhere safe. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. That night, in Sarah's guest room, I stared at the ceiling as hours ticked by. Sleep seemed impossible as my mind replayed James's words, his laughter, the evidence of his betrayal with my own sister. Every memory of our marriage was now suspect, every shared moment potentially a lie. The person I had been just days ago, trusting, loving, believing in my marriage, seemed like a naive stranger. In her place was someone new, someone shaped by betrayal but determined to survive it. As dawn broke, I made a silent promise to myself. This would not break me. Somehow, I would rebuild from these ashes. That first night at Sarah's apartment, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw James's cruel smile, heard his mocking laughter. By morning, I had watched the sunrise from Sarah's guest room window, my phone turned off after a barrage of manipulative messages from James ranging from, "You're overreacting," to, "I made a mistake, we need to talk." Sarah found me at the kitchen table at 6 in the morning, staring blankly at a cold cup of tea. "You need to document everything," she said, setting a notebook in front of me. "Write down dates, events, everything you can remember about their affair and his financial actions. Your lawyer will need it." Lawyer? The word felt foreign in my mouth. Yes, lawyer, Sarah said firmly. You're getting a divorce, Amanda. No question. She was right, of course. There was no coming back from this betrayal. Still, hearing the word divorce made it real in a way that sent fresh pain through me. That morning, I made the hardest phone call of my life to my parents. I couldn't tell them everything yet, couldn't bring myself to implicate Rebecca. Instead, I simply said James had been unfaithful and that we were separating. Oh, sweetheart, my mother gasped. Do you want us to come? We can be there by tomorrow. Not yet, I replied, my voice hollow. I need some time to figure things out first. After promising to call again soon, I hung up and let Sarah guide me through the immediate practical steps. She helped me make a list of accounts to secure, documents to gather, and appointments to schedule. First things first, she said. You need a lawyer. My cousin went through a nasty divorce last year. Her attorney was brilliant. I'll get you her number. That afternoon, while James was still at work, Sarah drove me back to the house to retrieve more of my belongings and important documents. Walking through the door felt like entering a crime scene. Everything looked the same, yet utterly different, tainted by knowledge of what had happened. Working quickly, I gathered my birth certificate, passport, social security card, and financial documents. In the office, I found statements for accounts I didn't know existed. James had apparently been diverting money for months. I took photos of everything, not knowing what might be important later. As we were leaving, Mark from my marketing team called. When I explained that I was dealing with a personal emergency, his response surprised me. I have the key to the company apartment downtown, he said. It's empty right now and yours if you need a place to stay. More private than a friend's guest room, and it's secure, doorman building. His kindness nearly broke me again. Thank you, I managed. That would actually help a lot. The following day, I met with Diana Ramirez, the divorce attorney Sarah recommended. In her office, surrounded by law books and with a box of tissues strategically placed on her desk, I poured out the whole story, including the video evidence of James's confession. He stole your money? Diana clarified, making notes. And used it to fund an affair with your sister? I nodded, the humiliation still fresh. That's financial abuse and fraud, she said bluntly. And we can use it. I'm going to file for an emergency financial restraining order today to prevent him from hiding or transferring assets. Over the next few days, I moved into the company apartment, opened new bank accounts in my name only, and transferred my direct deposit from work. Diana had warned me that once James was served divorce papers, he might react by trying to financially strangle me. She was right. The day after James received the papers, I discovered he had withdrawn nearly all the money from our joint checking and savings accounts. Thanks to Diana's foresight, the emergency restraining order was already in place, making his actions a direct violation that would work against him in court. What I wasn't prepared for was the social fallout. James launched a preemptive campaign telling our mutual friends his version of events, that I had been cold and career-obsessed, that he'd found comfort elsewhere, that I was vindicatively overreacting to what he characterized as a one-time mistake. Some friends, particularly couples we'd known through James's work, took his side without ever hearing mine. Text messages arrived questioning my decision to throw away our marriage, suggesting I should work things out, implying I shared blame for his infidelity. Then came the flying monkeys. James's mother called, her voice tearful but accusatory. Marriage takes work, Amanda. James made a mistake, but you've always been so focused on your career. Both of you need to compromise. I listened silently, then simply responded. He slept with my sister on my birthday and laughed in my face when I confronted him. There's no compromising with that. Then I hung up and blocked her number. Rebecca tried reaching out multiple times. Her first voicemail was tearful but oddly self-centered. I'm so sorry, Amanda. I never meant for this to happen. You have to believe me. I was in a vulnerable place after my breakup, and James was there for me. Please call me back. I can't lose my sister. Each message centered her feelings, her pain, her fear of consequences. Not once did she acknowledge the depth of her betrayal or the pain she had caused me. I deleted them all without responding. The hardest part came when my parents learned the full truth. After a week of vague explanations, I finally told them everything during a video call. My father's face went ashen while my mother pressed her hand to her mouth in shock. "Rebecca?" my mother whispered. "Our Rebecca did this to you?" The pain in their voices made me regret telling them, yet they needed to know why I couldn't come home for the upcoming family gathering, why I couldn't be in the same room as my sister. "What do you need from us?" my father asked finally, his voice rough with emotion. "Just time," I replied honestly, "and understanding why I can't be around her right now." As the initial shock began to fade, a cold, practical clarity took its place. I threw myself into building a case with Diana, documenting James's financial misconduct, gathering evidence of assets he had hidden during our marriage. Each discovery, a crypto account here, an unreported bonus there, fueled my determination rather than my pain. James's attempts to contact me grew increasingly desperate as he realized I wasn't coming back, that his actions had consequences he couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of. I maintained complete silence, communicating only through Diana. "You're doing exactly right," she assured me during our weekly meeting. "Every message he sends, every financial move he makes, just strengthens our position." At night, alone in the sterile company apartment, I still cried myself to sleep. But each morning, I woke up a little stronger, a little more resolved. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I now faced, and I would face it standing, not broken. 3 weeks after moving out, I woke to find 15 missed calls on my phone. I had blocked James's number days earlier, growing tired of his alternating threats and pleas. These calls came from unknown numbers and James's office line. The voicemails ranged from ominous, "You have no idea what you're doing, Amanda. You'll regret this," to pathetically pleading, "Please, just talk to me. I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything." The desperation in his voice gave me no satisfaction, only a weary sadness for the man I had once loved. That same morning, I received a text from Lisa, James's assistant at work. "Need to talk to you about James. Important information." Coffee? My instinct was to ignore it, to avoid anything connected to James. But something in the phrasing caught my attention. I agreed to meet Lisa at a cafe far from James's office. Lisa arrived looking nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting to be followed. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said immediately. "I could lose my job." "Doing what?" I asked cautiously. She slid a folder across the table. "James isn't just having an affair with your sister. There have been others. At least 3 that I know of in the last 2 years." The revelation should have hurt, but instead, I felt oddly validated. The problem had never been me. It had been James all along. "There's more," Lisa continued, lowering her voice. "I've been covering for financial discrepancies in his expense reports. Small amounts at first, but lately, it's thousands of dollars. He's been charging personal expenses as business costs and pocketing reimbursements." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because what he did to you is wrong," she said simply. "And because his behavior at work is getting erratic. He's been yelling at staff, missing meetings. Everyone's walking on eggshells. I think he might be embezzling from the company." I thanked Lisa for her courage and immediately called Diana to share this new information. Her response was immediate. "This changes things. If he's committing financial fraud at work, it strengthens our case about hidden assets. And multiple affairs shifts the narrative completely." For the first time since the confrontation, I felt a spark of something beyond pain, a sense of coming power. That evening, Sarah came over with takeout and wine. As we sat in my temporary living room, I found myself actually laughing about James's increasingly desperate voicemails. "He really thought you'd just forgive and forget, didn't he?" Sarah marveled. After what he said to you? He's never faced consequences before, I realized aloud. He's always charmed his way out of trouble. Not this time, Sarah said, raising her glass and toast. This time, he messed with the wrong woman. That night marked a turning point. Instead of seeing myself as a victim of James's betrayal, I began viewing myself as someone taking control, someone demanding justice. The shift was subtle but profound. The next day, I scheduled my first therapy session with Dr. Melissa Chin, who specialized in betrayal trauma. In her calm office, I poured out the whole ugly story. What you're experiencing is a normal response to extreme betrayal, she assured me. The fact that it involved your sister compounds the trauma. But I want you to know something important. People do recover from this. It doesn't define your future relationships or your ability to trust again. Those words were like a lifeline thrown into dark waters. The idea that this pain wouldn't last forever, that it wasn't my permanent reality, gave me the first real hope I'd felt in weeks. Dr. Chin recommended a support group for survivors of relational trauma. At my first meeting, sitting in a circle with strangers who understood exactly what I was going through, I felt less alone than I had since the confrontation. My husband had an affair with my best friend, shared a woman named Taylor. Everyone told me to work it out, as if betrayal is something you can compromise on. Heads nodded around the circle, including mine. The validation was powerful. These people understood that some betrayals cut too deep for reconciliation, that choosing to walk away wasn't giving up, it was self-preservation. As weeks passed, I began reconnecting with friends James had subtly isolated me from over the years. Brunch with my college roommate revealed that she had never liked James, but had kept her concerns to herself, not wanting to hurt me. There was something off about how he would talk about you when you weren't in the room, she confessed. Little put-downs disguised as jokes. I should have said something. You couldn't have known, I assured her, though part of me wished someone had pointed out what I had been too close to see. 6 weeks after moving out, I decided it was time for a visible change. I walked into an upscale salon and had my hair cut and colored, something James had always discouraged, claiming he preferred me natural. The woman who looked back from the mirror with honey-highlighted hair and confident eyes looked stronger, more assured. That weekend, Sarah convinced me to attend a gallery opening for a mutual friend's art exhibit. The thought of socializing in public made my stomach clench with anxiety, but I forced myself to go. You can't hide forever, Sarah pointed out. And Ellen would be crushed if you missed her big night. Entering the crowded gallery, I half expected to see James or even Rebecca. Instead, I was surrounded by genuine well-wishers, people who expressed subtle but clear support. I heard what happened, Ellen whispered as she hugged me. You're handling it with incredible grace. For a few hours, I remembered what it felt like to exist outside the shadow of betrayal. I laughed at jokes, discussed art I didn't fully understand, and even accepted a glass of champagne from a kind-eyed stranger who asked no personal questions. As I was preparing to leave, James's mother appeared, somehow having learned about the event. Her approach was confrontational, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. Amanda, we need to talk. This has gone on long enough. James is family. Drawing on newfound strength, I looked her directly in the eyes. No, Catherine, he's not family anymore. What he did destroyed that connection. Please respect my boundaries and don't approach me again. The gasps from nearby eavesdroppers might once have mortified me. Now, I simply walked away, head high, leaving Catherine stuttering behind me. On the legal front, things were progressing in my favor. Diana called with news that James's attempt to claim part of my retirement account had been rejected by the court due to his documented financial misconduct. The discovery process is revealing exactly what we suspected, she reported. He's been hiding assets throughout the marriage. The judge is not pleased. Then came news from an unexpected source. James's company had placed him on administrative leave pending an investigation into financial irregularities. Lisa's information had apparently triggered an internal audit. The same week, my marketing campaign for a major client won an industry award. The recognition came with a bonus and, more importantly, a senior director privately hinting at a possible promotion. "Your work has been exceptional, especially considering your personal circumstances," he noted. That shows remarkable professionalism and resilience. As Thanksgiving approached, the first holiday since the separation, I faced the painful reality of family gatherings. My parents called, clearly torn. "Rebecca's asking if you'll be here," my mother said hesitantly. "She says she wants to apologize in person." "I'm not ready," I admitted. "Maybe next year." Instead of traditional family celebrations, I accepted an invitation from Sarah and her husband to join their orphan Thanksgiving for friends without local family. Surrounded by people who knew my story and supported my healing journey, I found myself genuinely enjoying the day. When I returned to my apartment that night, I found a large box outside my door. Inside were expensive gifts from James, jewelry, designer clothes, things he thought might win me back. I donated everything to a women's shelter the next day. The gifts continued through December, each one returned or donated, each attempt at contact ignored. James seemed unable to accept that his money and charm couldn't fix what he had broken. During our final therapy session before the holiday break, Dr. Chin noted my progress. "6 weeks ago, you came in devastated and questioning your worth," she observed. "Today, you're planning your future independently and setting clear boundaries. That's remarkable growth, Amanda." "I still have moments where it hurts so much I can hardly breathe," I admitted. "Of course you do," she nodded. "Healing isn't linear. But you're not letting those moments define you anymore. That's the difference." As the new year approached, I looked back on the most painful months of my life with a strange sense of clarity. The betrayal had stripped away illusions and forced me to rebuild on a foundation of truth and self-respect. The woman emerging from this crucible was stronger than I could have imagined, not because pain had hardened me, but because surviving it had shown me my own resilience. January brought a court date for the divorce proceedings. Diana had prepared me thoroughly, but nothing could completely ready me for sitting across from James in the courtroom. He had lost weight, dark circles under his eyes, his usual polished appearance slightly disheveled. When our eyes met briefly, I felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, not love. The emotional hold he once had over me had dissolved, leaving only a calm determination to close this chapter of my life. The judge reviewed the evidence Diana had meticulously gathered, the financial misconduct, the hidden assets, the documented emotional abuse. James's attorney tried to paint me as a career-obsessed wife who had neglected her husband's needs, but the strategy fell flat against the mountain of evidence showing James's systematic betrayal. "Mr. Wilson," the judge said at one point, "the court takes a very dim view of the financial improprieties documented here." Removing funds from joint accounts after being served divorce papers shows clear bad faith. James attempted one last desperate maneuver, having his attorney propose a settlement that would require me to sign a non-disclosure agreement about his affairs in exchange for a more favorable financial split. "He's worried about his reputation," Diana explained during a recess. "The company investigation must be going poorly." "I'm not signing anything that silences me," I replied firmly. "My truth isn't for sale." Back in the courtroom, Diana rejected the offer outright. James's face flushed with anger, but there was nothing he could do. The judge's ruling heavily favored me, a fair division of legitimate assets, with additional compensation for the funds James had hidden or misappropriated. As we prepared to leave, James approached despite Diana's warning glare. "Amanda, please," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We can still fix this. I made mistakes, but we had something real." Looking directly into the eyes that had once made my heart race, I replied simply, "No, James. We didn't. I just didn't see it until now." I walked out of the courthouse into bright winter sunshine, feeling pounds lighter. The divorce wouldn't be final for a few more months due to state waiting periods, but the legal battle was essentially over. James had lost, not just me, but his attempts to manipulate the outcome. 2 weeks later, I learned from Lisa that James had been terminated from his position following the internal investigation. Criminal charges related to financial fraud were being considered. His carefully constructed facade was crumbling on all fronts. Rebecca's relationship with James collapsed shortly after the court date. According to my mother, James had dumped her when she became too needy, claiming she had served her purpose in hurting me. The revelation of how he truly viewed her apparently sent Rebecca into a depression. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, only a weary sadness that she had sacrificed our sisterhood for someone who valued her so little. When she sent a handwritten letter of apology, I read it but didn't respond. Some bridges take years to rebuild, if they can be rebuilt at all. In March, I signed the final divorce papers. There was no ceremony to mark the end of a marriage, no ritual to acknowledge the closing of such a significant chapter. After signing my name for the last time, I sat in my car and cried, not from grief, but from a complex mixture of relief, mourning for what I had thought we had, and pride in my own journey. The next phase of healing involved practical rebuilding. With my portion of the divorce settlement, I found a small house in a neighborhood I had always loved, but James had dismissed as too artsy. The moment I walked through the door of the 1920s bungalow with its original hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves, it felt right. "This is so you," Sarah declared during the housewarming party. "I never realized how much your style was suppressed in the other house." Looking around at the colorful artwork, the mismatched vintage furniture I loved, and the walls painted in deep blues and greens James would have hated, I realized she was right. This home reflected the person I was becoming, not the person I had been molded to be in my marriage. As spring arrived, I rediscovered hobbies James had subtly discouraged: hiking with a local outdoor group, taking pottery classes, reading frivolous fiction he had mocked. Each reclaimed interest felt like recovering a piece of myself that had been packed away. In May, I took the solo trip to Portugal I had suggested years ago, only to have James dismiss it as impractical. Walking alone through Lisbon's narrow streets, sampling local wines, and watching sunsets over the Atlantic, I found a peace I hadn't known was possible just months earlier. During a work event in June, Mark from marketing, who had helped me with the company apartment during my crisis, asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. The question brought unexpected butterflies. "I'm not ready to date yet," I told him honestly. "That's not what I'm asking," he replied with understanding. "Just coffee between friends. No pressure, no expectations." I accepted, appreciating his respect for my boundaries. The coffee turned into a pleasant tower conversation about books, travel, and our shared love of obscure documentaries. For the first time since the betrayal, I could imagine eventually trusting someone enough to open my heart again. Not now, but someday. When the final divorce decree arrived in July, nearly 6 months after the court date, I was in the middle of a major presentation at work. I checked the notification during a break, acknowledged it with a nod, and returned to my professional responsibilities without missing a beat. The document that would once have devastated me now felt like merely an administrative detail in a chapter already emotionally closed. That evening, I performed a private ritual of release. In my backyard, I burned the wedding photos I had kept in a box, watching as flames consumed images of a smiling couple who no longer existed. The woman in those photos, trusting, naive, eager to please, had been transformed through fire into someone stronger, wiser, and fiercely protective of her peace. As summer progressed, I was surprised to receive an invitation to speak at a women's financial literacy workshop. The organizer had heard my story through mutual connections and thought my experience with financial abuse could help others recognize warning signs. Standing before a room of attentive women, sharing the subtle ways James had maintained financial control throughout our marriage, I found purpose in my pain. If my story helped even one woman protect herself from similar manipulation, perhaps some meaning could be salvaged from the wreckage of my marriage. Financial independence isn't just about having your own money, I told the group. It's about maintaining your autonomy within a partnership. No one who truly loves you will use money as a weapon against you. The presentation led to more speaking opportunities, creating an unexpected side career alongside my marketing work. Each time I shared my experience, the telling became easier, more focused on lessons learned than pain endured. In August, my parents visited my new home for the first time. Their approval was evident as they explored each carefully decorated room. "You seem happy," my father observed as we sat on the porch swing that evening. "Genuinely happy, not just putting on a brave face." I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. Not all the time, but more often than not now. The conversation inevitably turned to Rebecca. She had moved back to our hometown, was attending therapy, and, according to my mother, was trying to figure out who she is outside of her relationships. "She asks about you," my mother said gently. "Wants to know if you'll ever forgive her." I sighed, watching fireflies blink in the gathering dusk. "I'm not there yet. Forgiveness feels like saying what she did was okay, and it wasn't." "Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation," my father offered. "Sometimes it's just about setting down a burden you've carried long enough." His words stayed with me long after they returned home. Perhaps true healing would eventually include releasing the anger I still carried toward Rebecca, not for her benefit, but for mine. As fall approached, bringing the anniversary of the betrayal with it, I braced for the emotional impact. But when my birthday arrived, I found myself focused not on last year's pain but on this year's growth. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged not just intact but flourishing. Sarah organized a small celebration at my favorite restaurant, surrounded by friends who had stood by me throughout the ordeal. As we shared dessert and laughter, I realized I had built a chosen family of remarkable strength and loyalty. Later that night, I received a text from an unknown number, James, using yet another way to circumvent my blocks. "Happy birthday. I think about you every day. We could still try again." I deleted it without responding, feeling only a distant pity for someone still trapped in the past while I had moved decisively forward. His power over my emotions had dissolved completely, the final victory in a battle I hadn't chosen, but had ultimately won. 1 year after sitting alone with a single cupcake on my birthday, I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows of my bungalow and the scent of coffee brewing. Sarah had organized a surprise birthday brunch, and my small dining room was soon filled with friends bearing gifts and genuine affection. "Speech," someone called as I blew out the candles on a proper birthday cake. Looking around at these people who had witnessed my darkest moments and celebrated each step of my recovery, I felt a fullness in my heart I once thought impossible to recapture. "A year ago, I thought my life was ending," I began, my voice steady. I couldn't imagine feeling joy again, or trust, or even peace. But standing here now, I realize that what felt like an ending was actually a beginning. Thank you all for being part of this new chapter. Later that day, I found a letter in my mailbox from Dr. Chin. Inside was a note congratulating me on the 1-year mark of my healing journey. "Few clients have embraced the painful work of recovery with your courage and determination," she wrote. "The progress you've made isn't measured just in time past, but in the wisdom and strength you've cultivated. Your story inspires me professionally and personally." Her words brought tears to my eyes, not the desperate tears of last year, but gentle tears of recognition for how far I had come. News about James reached me occasionally through mutual acquaintances. His professional reputation was in tatters following the financial misconduct investigation. He had moved to another state, supposedly to start fresh, but rumors suggested he was struggling to find comparable employment with his history. Rebecca's journey had been different. According to my mother, she had committed to intensive therapy, acknowledging the deep-seated insecurities and validation-seeking that had led to her betrayal. She had moved into a small apartment, taken a job at a local bookstore, and was, by all accounts, doing the difficult work of becoming a better person. I still maintained my distance, but the white-hot anger had cooled to something more manageable. We had exchanged brief, carefully neutral emails about logistics when my parents celebrated their anniversary. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a step away from the consuming resentment that had once threatened to define me. My parents had navigated the difficult position of loving two daughters in conflict with remarkable grace. They never pressured me to reconcile before I was ready, nor did they abandon Rebecca despite their disappointment in her actions. Their steady, unconditional love for both of us provided a model of what family could be even after terrible ruptures. In my professional life, the resilience I had demonstrated during personal crisis led to new opportunities. The promotion I had been subtly working toward came through, along with a significant raise. The irony wasn't lost on me. The career James had resented was now providing me with the means to build a life more authentic and fulfilling than our marriage had ever been. Mark and I had continued our coffee meetings, which gradually evolved into dinners and museum visits. He understood when I needed to take things slowly, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. By the 1-year mark, we were cautiously calling what we had a relationship, though we both recognized I was still healing. "I'm not the same person I was before all this happened," I told him one evening as we walked along the riverfront. "I'm more cautious, more vigilant. I don't know if that will ever completely change." "I don't want the person you were before," he replied simply. "I'm interested in who you are now, who you're becoming. That includes the scars." His acceptance of my changed self helped me accept it too, not as damaged goods, but as someone with hard-earned wisdom. That wisdom manifested in unexpected ways. Friends began coming to me for advice about relationship concerns, valuing my ability to spot subtle red flags they might have missed. A cousin considering marriage asked me to review her prenuptial agreement, trusting my heightened awareness of financial protection. I found myself frequently sharing the lessons betrayal had taught me. Trust your intuition. The little voice that whispers something isn't right deserves your attention, not your dismissal. Financial independence within partnership is non-negotiable. Love doesn't ask you to sacrifice security or autonomy. Betrayal reveals truth, not just about the betrayer, but about your own strength and resilience. The people who stand by you in crisis are your true family, regardless of blood ties. Healing happens gradually in layers. Some days you move forward, others you slide back, but the overall trajectory matters more than daily fluctuations. Forgiveness isn't an obligation, it's a gift you may eventually give yourself by setting down the burden of anger. When I shared these insights during a women's retreat in November, a participant asked the question I had often asked myself early in my journey: how do you ever trust again after something like that? "You don't trust blindly again," I answered after careful consideration. "But you can learn to trust wisely, starting with yourself and your own judgment, then extending that trust selectively to people who earn it consistently through actions, not words or promises." As the holiday season approached, I faced another challenge, a family gathering where Rebecca would be present. After long conversations with my therapist and careful reflection, I decided I was ready for this limited contact, with clear boundaries established in advance. The reunion was awkward but not devastating. Rebecca maintained respectful distance, our interactions limited to basic civility. I noticed she had changed too, less flashy, more thoughtful in her speech, the performer quality that had often characterized her behavior notably subdued. Watching her help our mother in the kitchen, I realized something important. I no longer defined myself in opposition to her betrayal. It had shaped me, certainly, but it no longer controlled me. My identity had expanded far beyond the betrayed wife or the wronged sister to encompass all I had built and become in the aftermath. In quiet moments, I sometimes reflected on the strange, painful gift that betrayal had ultimately provided, the opportunity to rebuild a life more authentically aligned with my true self than the compromised existence I had accepted in my marriage. Without the traumatic rupture, I might have continued indefinitely in a relationship that subtly diminished me, with a husband who resented my success and a sister who envied rather than celebrated my happiness. The pain had been excruciating, but the freedom on the other side was worth every tear shed, every sleepless night, every moment of questioning my worth. On New Year's Eve, I hosted a small gathering at my home, something the old Amanda would never have done without James orchestrating the event. As midnight approached, we stood in my backyard under stars, champagne glasses raised. To endings that become beginnings, I toasted, and to the wisdom that only comes through fire. As the new year dawned, I felt ready for whatever it might bring. The woman who had once defined herself through others' eyes now looked to her own inner compass for direction. The journey ahead would have its challenges, but I would face them with hard-earned confidence in my ability to weather storms and rebuild from ashes. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy me had instead revealed a strength I never knew I possessed. Not the brittle strength of walls and armor, but the supple resilience of a tree that bends in powerful winds without breaking. In that discovery lay the most profound healing of all. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest wounds. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings clear the way for the most authentic beginnings.